Welcome to the Reclaim Project podcast. In this episode, Sean and Ocean discuss some of the issues around modern-day masculinity. This introductory discussion is a pilot into a series of discussions on this topic.
Pick yourself up.
Don't be a chump.
Don't be a pussy.
Don't let nobody disrespect you. Be cool and be kind of a dick.
Always keep your mouth shut.
Nobody likes a tattletale.
What a fag.
You little bitch.
Let your woman run your life.
Bros come before hoes. Get laid.
Be a man. Be a man.
Grow some balls.
Man up.
Mate, here we are. Thanks again for joining me. It's been a good while since you've sat in the hot chair. Great to have you back.
Fantastic to be here, Sean.
Yeah.
It's always good to interact with you and share space and time and connection.
Yeah, it's always great to see you, brother. We're going to touch on a subject that's, I don't know, to be fair, it can be quite a contentious issue. So we're going to talk around masculinity, which is quite a broad kind of topic, and we'll draw some things out of that over the next couple of weeks, few weeks. Hopefully we can nut out what it is that society sees as being a man.
Yeah, I feel equipped to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because I identify as a man.
As do I. And that's the profound question, what exactly does that mean? There's going to be some different flavours. There's going to be different versions depending on who you speak to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think you can put in one bucket what constitutes masculinity.
No, it's going to be different depending on your raising, your background, where you are in the world.
Just from because I've been a man a long time. So just around my experiences, some of the things that I feel society sees as being a man, and particularly being masculine, is that stoicism, resilience, being the provider, being unshakable. That's what I would say is my understanding of what society sees as being a man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But where I want to start, though, is peel back to the beginning. Like, where does that identity as a man start? Like, where does that understanding of what a man is, where does that start? Where does that understanding of what it takes to be a man, where does that come from?
Well, I feel like this is a great space for me to speak into. I have two little boys, they're 5 and 6, and there's been a massive evolution for me as a man stepping into fatherhood, because it has brought to the forefront what is it that I need to impart upon these little boys so that they turn up into men that don't add to the issues that we see in society at the moment. So what is the identity of a man that I need to model so that these boys can have something as a frame of reference? And it's an important question for me to be asking myself, and I start looking around, and I've seen some really poor examples of what it means to be a man out there. You don't have to look too far, and we see that there are massive issues in our society with men that aren't turning up in a way that we need them to.
No, you're absolutely right. And the scrutiny around masculinity has been at the forefront of late. We're talking about so many domestic violence incidents.
3 weeks into the new year,
the last fortnight has seen a spike in the number of women in Australia allegedly killed by men they knew.
Survivors of domestic violence say the current laws designed to protect them are not working.
and the mounting loss of life has forced the government's hand.
And men just doing the wrong thing.
Do you mind if I just share that part of the reason I reached out for you about this content stemmed from a singular incident at my work, and if I can speak into that.
Yeah, please.
It led me to want to have a conversation about this. So there's a gentleman at my work who approached a female. It was after hours. It's 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, and they were the only two at the premises. And this woman felt uncomfortable to the extent that, unbeknownst to this guy, she turned her phone on and started to record the conversation because she felt threatened. And what came out of this guy's mouth, when I heard it, it impacted me. And the overarching message that came through to me was, as a man, I need to approach him from a place of compassion to say, that's not how we turn up. You do not have the right to make this woman feel threatened. You do not have the right to step into a situation like that and through your presence impact another person negatively. And as a man, I feel that we need to bring other men into check, but we need to do that compassionately. You don't want to confront that person aggressively and blow up a situation, because the male response is usually just to lead to violence, right?
Exactly right. You fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And violence begets violence, right? Yeah. Off the back of that, I approached this guy and we had a chat, and I was like, hey, look, from one man to another, there is a different way that you could be turning up.
And again, with that, a fight fire with fire kind of attitude, that would stem from early childhood, like...
Or tribalism, if we go back far enough. Yeah.
Absolutely. But, we have, in our childhood, have toxic language thrown at us like, don't be a girl, or stand up for yourself, or, say there's a bully at school, fight back. That there already is that conditioning where you fix things with violence or
use
or
your
aggressively.
physicality to impart your will.
Correct. There's no education around emotional regulation. In fact, that's frowned upon. You're encouraged to suppress your emotions.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And anecdotally, I came across this at work today. There was a guy there, he's one of my colleagues, and he walked past and I could see there was some darkness in him, there was something impacting him. So I said, hey, you okay, mate? What's going on? And he went on to tell me this story about some pretty significant issues in his home, right? In his home life, there's some things that aren't going to plan. He's a massive Croatian man. He would be 6'4". He's very, very big, solid, strong man. And he told me this, and the result was that the police were called and they asked him to leave his own home. And to hear that, I can see both sides of the story here, right? But to hear that, it's quite confronting, right? There's a physicality, a presence to this man. His ethnicity, his background, he's a very proud man. And I heard him, and without judgment, I looked at him and said, how are you going up here? And his response was, who cares? And I said, well, to be honest, mate, I asked because I care. And as soon as I said that, he broke down. He started crying.
Yeah.
There's this big, strong man there that couldn't hold it in anymore. Went behind closed doors, and as soon as we closed the doors, I gave this guy a massive hug. And that is what he needed. He needed someone to hear him. He needed to be able to express this emotion without judgment, without someone labelling him for doing that, and just to have some compassion. And I feel like the more that we do this, the more that we as men open up and offer that level of compassion to a man that is clearly struggling, start changing the narrative.
Correct. Once the message gets out there that it's absolutely okay to be vulnerable and it's healthy to deal with those emotions.
Yeah, you speak about the emotional regulation, right?
Yeah.
What toolkit does the average man on the street have to access that emotional regulation when they've been societally conditioned? Men don't cry, men don't show any emotion. You do mention the Stoics, and I really love some of their principle work, but around that is men are stone, they are granite, they don't show any emotion even if something is impacting them.
Exactly.
And I don't feel like that fits into the modern narrative as well as it could.
No, absolutely.
We need to dovetail some of that resilience that the Stoics talk into with vulnerability so that we're not impacting the more vulnerable people in our community through inaction or through emotional dysregulation.
It'll throw us back into authentic masculinity, We're still going to be protectors. That's just in our DNA, and that's just who we are.
Did you know there's this really fascinating fact? They call it dad strength, right? So when a man has small children come into their life, so they become a father, they're surrounded by small children, they get a kick in testosterone. Nature makes them physically stronger. And that strength is there to help them protect their children.
Is that right?
That is absolutely right, mate. Yep, there's a biological upgrade, dad strength.
And that's
how do we use that strength? That then is that's the real question.
And that's the issue. We have all this stuff, but we don't know where to channel it.
I tell you where you don't channel it. You don't mask your feelings and emotions through drugs or alcohol or any of these negative things.
Absolutely. There are more masks. People might think, okay, I want to prove my masculinity by being an economic success. I'm going to be the most powerful businessman. I'm going to have all this money and drive all the cars, and that'll prove that I'm a man. So economic success is one of them.
So what trade-off do you have as a man if you choose economic success?
That drive, I think, stems from your inability to channel elsewhere. So you channel it all into one thing, like ambition.
But if you put financial success above your connection to your family, was it worth it?
No, and I think you're always going to be left wanting. There's no destination. You can have 10 cars and you're still going to feel empty, I believe. You're always going to be chasing, but you're chasing the wrong thing. You're chasing material thing where it should be
that internal feeling of success.
That's the void.
For me, at this point in my life, success looks like raising happy, healthy little boys that turn up in the world and they have a sense of purpose, they have a sense of identity, they have a sense of, okay, well, Dad's armed me with a toolkit on how to deal with things and I can go out in the world and find myself.
Absolutely. I would say the other mask is sporting prowess, that alpha kind of. Now, this is interesting too, because in that sporting arena. I've certainly had coaches in rugby that would throw toxic language at us. You kick like a girl, and that gets thrown around a lot. You know, you throw like a girl, you kick like a girl, you pass like a girl.
And that's making the girl seem inferior.
Exactly.
And that reinforces, well, you're less than I am.
They grow up with that.
Now I treat you differently. You're not as strong as I am.
Correct.
I can dominate you because of my strength.
There we go. Exactly. Yeah.
And how does that make a woman feel?
Exactly right.
You know, if it's mischanneled strength, it makes them feel unsafe. A woman wants to feel safe, and you can make her feel safe with your physicality and your strength. You don't need to overextend it to the extent that you now make her feel like you are the threat.
And this is what we're talking about, positive masculinity.
And I think it's high time that we find people that champion this, that we find men that are willing to step up, call out other men, but doing it from a place of compassion. Like, hey, brother, there is a different way.
I think there are a fair chunk of men that want to hear that. They are waiting for that message. They're waiting to bust out of this social construct.
Yeah, I don't feel like I fit in anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
We're seeing more and more in the society that men are committing these atrocious behaviours and acts, and then we all get painted with that brush.
We do, yeah.
You know, lately that's been the question, which would you prefer to come across in a forest, a bear or a man? And it's been a resolute response that most women would like to come across a bear.
Isn't that
concerning?
That's more than concerning. It's devastating.
Yeah.
Have we really become that bad?
I've had my eyes open, so from my lens that I observe life through, I don't view myself as misogynistic. I don't view myself as someone that belittles or treats women differently. But I asked a large group online, about 80,000 men, what does it mean to be a man? And to read some of the responses that came through, it was quite sobering that I didn't actually realise that men thought like this, that men felt like this. Some of the responses were, well, I've got a dick. You know what? You're born with that. You know, you're a boy when you're born with that. That doesn't necessarily make you a man. That's just a biological feature. The flip side of this community, a lot of men stepped in and like what it means to be a man, to be accountable, to honour your word, to protect, to provide, to be that rock that your family needs to depend upon.
That's a lot of expectation around what you need to stand for as a man. And that's why I think that's why a lot of guys become so destitute when they feel they're lacking one of those or a couple of those ingredients. Yeah. Because now I feel emasculate. I'm not, I'm less of a man because I can't do this and I can't do that.
From a first-hand point of view, mate, I've lost a job in the past and it impacted me. Like I felt like I'm a loser. I'm unable to provide to my family. I felt unworthy. When you're in the trenches of that kind of feeling, it's really hard to recognise, hey, jobs will come and go. You will find another job. You will find your feet. And in that moment, I really, really needed the solace of a brotherhood. But so often men are in isolation in our communities. They don't have that support structure. They don't have other men that they can reach out and have honest conversations with. So they go through this in silence. They go through this thinking that they're the only one. They go through this thinking that there is no one that they can turn to. And so then they hide this feeling of shame because that's the base emotion behind something like this. I feel ashamed that I can't meet this conditionality of being a man.
We talked about this on a previous podcast. There's no surprise that with that in mind, that the suicide rate for men is that high. It's astronomical.
Yeah, I can't help feel there's a causal link between the identity of your masculinity and how it's turning up in the world and the numbers that are behind the male suicide rate.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with that regulation we've just talked about. Regulating your thoughts, being able to speak your mind, speak your truth, your absolute truth.
And it's all about, hey, you can have conversations with people that you need to have. I don't know if you've ever tried to have a heart-to-heart conversation with someone when you've been under the influence of alcohol.
I have.
Yep. Did it come out the way that you wanted it to?
Absolutely not.
No, and you stumble over your words, you end up making a faux pas, and you kind of have done more damage.
Because the next day and the day after that and the day after that, you don't feel any different. Like you don't feel like you've got anything off your chest.
No, because it hasn't been a genuine exchange.
It hasn't come from a real place, no.
I guess it's a call to arms for men to face up what's really impacting them and to do it from a place of no judgment, from a place of compassion. There is no shame in saying, hey, this is what's going on for me, and to be surrounded by people that will just go.
You know, mate, you touched on a point, or you brought up this point earlier about guys dealing with their whatever they need to deal with in isolation and not being able to express themselves. That starts in early childhood as well, because somebody could be going through a horrible time in their childhood, early teens or whatever. Might be some issues at home, domestic violence, or they might be abused, or who knows, but there's no channel. I've read up on a few cases. One was abused as a kid by a family member, and he actually reported it to his mother or father, I can't remember, and was ostracised, just like, you're lying, and copped the blame for it. Made it worse. In his later teens, I think he was 17, he committed a murder. And he was interviewed by a forensic psychologist. Said, look, what made you do it? And he told his story. Said, look, I didn't feel validated as a kid, and that grew into resentment, and that I didn't fit in anywhere because I felt that I don't matter. And how I felt at the moment of taking another human life, is that I didn't feel anything because I didn't value my life at the time, so I couldn't possibly value another human being's, because human beings have done me wrong all my life.
The tragedy behind that is that his actions have now created trauma in someone else that didn't deserve that.
He said those exact words. He said, look, I've healed and I haven't reconciled everything. He recognised that.
Right, so this young guy, he had a traumatic event. He was abused, and he was not seen, not heard, and he was ostracised.
Yeah, and didn't know where else to channel that pain and that confusion. Self-blame, really, because, like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why me? What have I done? Felt that he couldn't talk to any friends about it.
Through shame.
Absolutely.
Yep. And that unresolved trauma leads to a further catastrophic event, which then puts the trauma into another person's orbit. Could you imagine reporting something that is so absolutely devastating and to be not believed about it? You lose all faith in the structure that you've been surrounded by.
So we've covered off
the wealth,
the sporting, sexual conquest, I think.
I'll be real.
The more women you sleep with, the more masculine you are, like the more of a stud you are.
I will be real here in this space. I have been guilty of this.
Okay.
Yep. And I look back upon it now, and how I observed a intimate connection with a person has changed significantly over the years, right? And I feel ashamed on how I observed sex, because it was transactional for me. Not that I'd go out and rent women. Yeah, but it was transactional, and it was just a function. There was no genuine connection with that person, right? And it just was like, well, if I put another notch on the belt, then I will get the accolade and the adoration of my peer group. And I couldn't have been more wrong about it.
But around that sexual conquest point is also, it's not just the notches in the belt, it's also the language thrown at women. Like, it's very degrading. Again, I think that would stem from an early childhood kind of don't throw like a girl kind of thing, So women are less than you are. Women are a commodity.
A commodity.
Yeah.
That sits in me so poorly to hear that. The more I'm going on this journey of my existence, the more I'm aware that in the intimate space, it's an energy transfer, right? Like, there's an energetic element to this. And there's a sacred element to that, right? Like, it shouldn't just be given away, because that's going to deplete you as a man, as a person. You diminish its value. Like, sex can be an extremely beautiful connection between you and another person, but it's got to be the right energetic transfer. If you're just giving it away for the sake of proving yourself or having just another conquest, it hollows it out and diminishes it.
Of course it does.
It does take a lot of courage to sort of step back from this biological urge to procreate with everything with legs and go, that's not right for me, right? And if you have the capacity to do that, you're well on the way to having mastery over yourself. And if you've got the mastery over yourself, well, the world is yours.
So physical strength, again, it all ties in with, the sporting prowess, the sexual conquest, but being physically strong, I think a lot of guys would view that as, that's what makes me a man. Like, if I just go and pick up heavy weights and do all the heavy stuff, all the rugged stuff, that's what makes me a man. It's as narrow a view as, well, I've got the genitalia that says I'm a man, so I'm a man.
Sean, you are structurally a very physically imposing person. would you define yourself by your strength?
No.
I would define myself by my strength, but it's not the physical strength that I'm talking about. It's the strength of my character.
Yeah.
You know, the courage of my convictions. That strength is real strength.
I completely agree with you, and I've embodied that as well. And my mentor was my dad, because he had this quiet strength about him that I always admired, always. And he was a man of few words, but when he spoke, we listened.
Yeah, with weight.
Yeah, and also my dad's generation though, also speaking your emotions, speaking your truth is taboo. So my dad was the oldest in his family. He was the eldest, and he outlived all his siblings. And I went to all my uncles' and aunts' funerals, and my dad would be, like we said, just the stoic, standing at the graveside, just, I wouldn't say emotionless, because there's clearly he felt something, but he didn't express it. And I always thought, well, how is he doing that? Everyone else around him was crying and carrying on, but how does he know a certain philosophy that I've yet to learn about life, But I've come to realise that it was just that his upbringing would have been, men don't cry. But coming back to strength, his strength of character and that quiet strength is what I've always admired. I don't know, you have this sense of kind of knowing, like, I don't know.
A wisdom.
A wisdom, absolutely.
So was it a gentle presence? So that's beautiful, right?
Gentle but strong. Yeah, but look, all that early conditioning, like we keep talking about, comes back to parents. We've just touched on my dad, but external to the family. We've got the education system, we've got media, coaches. I touched on coaches before.
Yeah, just something's floated through on that point. In my eldest son, he has this Auskick group that he's in.
Yep.
So there's 6-7-year-old kids running around, but there are equal numbers of girls playing with the boys. And it just dawned on me while we were having this conversation, no one in that leadership and coaching group would dare say to anyone, you kick like a girl.
Yeah.
And so maybe we're going to start seeing some positive change by integrating boys and girls into what would have traditionally been like a masculine or a male-centric arena.
I think that'd be great.
One of the greatest things that I see in the sporting realm in particular, my passion is surfing. And so over the last, say, 5-10 years, the women's surfing has done something quite unique. They have gone to parity with the winnings for the women, so there is no difference in what the male winner and the female winner get. And the level of surfing that is now being done by these females is phenomenal. It's on par with the men. And I watch it and I'm like, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have watched this. I would have been like, this is rubbish,
Yeah.
But now that they've got this parity of earning potential, it's attracting people that might have in the past looked at that and gone, why would I enter into a competition where I am treated as less? I do feel like in our society, we're becoming more vigilant of where the patriarchy has a high watermark.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a positive shift, but there's still a fair bit of work to be done.
Yeah, and I feel that is men shepherding men towards better outcomes.
We have to. It has to come from us.
100%, mate, 100%. And so hopefully when we expand upon this conversation over the next coming weeks, we really look at some of the ways that we can model that and we can look at how to bring out the best in the men around us.
Absolutely, because there are guys that have hearts of gold. They've got so much to offer, but they don't know it.
They don't know how to access it.
They don't know how to access it.
A guy that is really in touch with his masculinity, he's not going to be out there using it to disadvantage other people, right?
No.
He's longing for that masculinity to be met by an equally impressive embodied femininity, for the most part.
From childhood, the conditioning, so toys even, like you look at the toys, traditionally it's going to be guys have the guns and the camo and the knives and bow and arrow.
That's how I was brought up,
Yep. Girls have the dolls and the ponies, all the fairer stuff. But doesn't that then also breed some level of aggression, like having these military-style weapons as toys and you be a soldier, that's a strong man kind of thing. Well, soldiers suffer. Even the video games, it's all very violent and it's shooting and it's stealing cars.
Yeah, look, they are a form of escapism, right? You get to be someone different in that realm.
This is true, but then, okay, let's say one of these shoot 'em up games. I don't play video games, so I don't know the name of it, but it's where you just go from room to
Hell for
room,
leather,
shooting people. There was a terrorist attack in New Zealand.
I was thinking about this morning, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
that guy that walked into the mosque.
Yes,
Yep.
and he went around and shot a few people. He was playing that game like he was.
Yeah, it's very strange that you bring that up, because that popped into my mind just really randomly on my way to work this morning.
Yeah, wow.
About how misguided that guy was, right? Like, what led him to create such an atrocious set of circumstances? You know, and from memory, that guy streamed it live as if it was a first-person action shooter.
That's right.
A gunman attacked 2 mosques while hundreds of Muslims were praying.
The man who is claiming responsibility and charged with murder is an extreme right-wing white supremacist who live-streamed the attack, saying it was aimed at immigrants.
You know, we've had our own on our shores. I mean, that guy is Australian,
Yep.
and we've had, Martin Bryant in Tasmania. But his upbringing was quite traumatic. And again, he didn't have that outlet, and he was always, bullied and made fun of. So he had all this buried stuff.
Yeah.
Until the valve
let go.
But yeah, coming back to masculinity, I think part of it as well as our conditioning as young boys is to be a man. You need to shun all that is feminine. You know, your empathy, your intimate conversations, that kind of stuff.
For me as a dad, I am as real as I can possibly be. If something has impacted me, my boys will see me cry. And they'll ask me why, and I will tell them. They have seen me help people that could give me nothing in return. They have witnessed me go through things that I say to them, I feel really proud that I have achieved this. They have seen me apologise to them, like, hey, I got this wrong. They need to see the whole range. What they will never see from me is me closing a door on their face. They will never see me saying, you're wrong for expressing this feeling.
Because the effect that would have on them, it's a lasting lifetime effect.
That they weren't validated, right? That they were not seen, not heard, misunderstood.
Look, and me growing up, I did a lot of, just by virtue of my family dynamics, like I'm the youngest of a large family as well, and there's quite a significant age difference between myself and the other siblings.
Yep.
I'm right down the bottom. So growing up, I didn't actually have, to be fair, anything in common with my siblings because they were so much older. They were doing different things, and they were going out to nightclubs. I was just this little kid. So I was in solitude a lot of the time. I had a very best friend who I lost to a car accident, but he was pretty much like a brother to me. But I did all my siphoning, all my processing and analysing in solitude. And I carried that into adulthood, well into it, till it became very toxic. I was very confident in my ability to resolve things and tap into my wisdom, but there came a point where I couldn't. Well, I needed to open up and share because I just couldn't do it on my own. And that actually took a lot of courage.
100%, that was the exact word I was about to use.
It took a lot of courage, yeah.
You think that strength is just what you can lift up, or what you can push, or who you can physically dominate. Real strength is to face up to the things that are impacting you and say, I need someone to support me here.
That's the real deal.
The challenge that we face is that when a man makes that call, we pick up the phone. We don't let them do that in silence, because that becomes a negative reinforcing loop where I reached out but no one was there.
Lewis Howes, a really well-known podcaster in America, wrote a book. I can't remember the title of the book, but he lists a number of these masks that we adopt as males, and it's a very, very good read.
One of the things that I think is when we were in tribal times, young men were taken through an initiation process. So the males that were there supporting them took them, and it was secret men's business, but they were shown and given tools of what it meant, the boundary to be a man in this society or in their group. And we don't have that anymore, right? Now we have these people that are in isolation. They don't have these positive role models supporting them, surrounding them, guiding them.
The only example I can think of around that initiation into manhood or into brotherhood are your fraternity.
Yeah.
But that's a toxic... This is how you become a toxic man.
Yeah. hey, drink to excess, objectify the people around you, make yourself number one, shaft everyone that you can to get to the top.
Yeah, and those fraternities, your frat brothers are number one. You don't tell them. There's a code of silence.
Yeah, it's a boys' club.
It's a boys' club. There were often rapes on campus. Mum's the word.
So you leave a trail of destruction in your wake.
Yeah.
And feel like you're a master of the universe.
Correct. And this is at college. This is at uni, and you take this into adulthood. Yeah.
Johnny Cash made this beautiful saying, what's done in the dark will be brought to the light. Yeah. You can't treat people poorly and get away with it forever.
Universe won't let you, man.
I really feel like, as a man, I have a number of different roles to fulfill. As a father, as a friend, as a partner. But like I started off with, this role at the moment about modelling what it means to be a man of virtue, to shepherd other men towards this, I really feel like that is something that needs to be prominent.
Absolutely. It should be done yesterday. It's long overdue. Because what's happening, you're talking about raising kids, boys in particular, because you want to raise them to be men. If you yourself are an inauthentic man, that's what you're going to pass on. There'd be guys out there saying, well, I don't have boys, no, I've got daughters. The same applies.
Yeah, my best friend has 2 daughters.
Yeah, you then are a model to your daughter as to if you're damaged or inauthentic, you're not in touch with your real self. That then becomes a model to your daughter. I'm like, okay, that's because daughters look up to their dads.
Yeah.
That's a man. This is what a man or masculinity is.
If you see your father, he drinks too much and loses control, that's acceptable.
Yeah.
You know? And that's not the message, That's we shouldn't be exposing our kids to our worst selves. We should be exposing them to our best selves and be intentional about this.
Over the coming weeks, we'll delve more into perhaps some of the modalities that can help guys drill down to their authenticity and deal with what needs to be just off the cuff. There are cold therapies, cold water therapies, and as basic as that sounds, it's so powerful.
I've been doing the saunas down the beach lately, and like you cycle through the sauna, it's 115 degrees, and then 15 minutes in, then you jump in the ocean and cool down. And I got to tell you, in the middle of winter, the water's not warm.
No.
But that cycling, that thermal cycling, it helps you to understand a regulation, a cadence inside your body.
Yeah.
And then that transpires to an emotional regulation, right? If you can sit in discomfort for 15 minutes and then get relief, that also becomes discomfort.
Yeah.
It teaches you a little bit about yourself.
And obviously, that has to go hand in hand with other trauma release techniques, maybe some sound healing or or counselling. It all has to work together.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. A healthy individual is healthy in body, mind and spirit. It's a trilogy. And if one is out of alignment, you're not optimal.
Mate, as usual, it's been an absolute pleasure.
I'm really excited to be moving into this space, Sean, and tapping in.
This podcast is very much an introductory message about what we aim to do in the next few weeks.
Yeah, look, I don't have all the answers. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
It's not. No, it really isn't. And, geez, I don't know any one person who has all the answers. If there's one person who thinks, he embodies everything, every ingredient that is masculine, we'd love to hear from you, bring it on because we need that knowledge. So, share it. Yeah, but, mate, thanks again for your time.
Appreciate you, Sean.